This is wrestling's greatest moments.
Hey now, wrestling fans! It's time for another episode of Wrestling's Greatest Moments. Wrestling fans love tag team matches and have their particular favorite teams. However, some tag teams never had a chance. Sit back as Wrestling's Greatest Moments looks at 5 tag teams that were doomed from the start. Before we get started though, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a single video. Fake Diesel and Kane. Let's start with a team so bad and so poorly conceived that it serves as a template what not to do when building a tag team. It also demonstrates how a bad tag team can be made of good workers who are simply saddled with a bad gimmick. Nothing can, or likely ever will, compare to the WWF's attempt to replace Scott Hall and Kevin Nash's Razor Ramon and Diesel characters with 2 different wrestlers. This might have worked if Razor Ramon and Diesel worked under a mask, because promoters have often replaced one or both members of a masked team with different wrestlers. While WWF fans are still trying to burn this memory away, Wrestling's Greatest Moments feels obligated to examine the abomination that was known as the fake Diesel and Razor Ramon characters and see why it failed so badly. 1. Promise fans that 2 popular wrestlers are returning, even though the promotion knew this wouldn't happen. Check. 2. Use replacements who are the wrestling equivalent of stunt doubles from the 1960s and 1970s TV shows who look nothing like the original stars. Check. 3. Continue using these wrestlers despite an enormous fan backlash. Check. So much has been written about how terrible this concept was, including the books Wrestlecrap-the Titan Sinking series and many others, that there's not much to say, other than it's miraculous how Glenn Jacobs bounced back from 2 seemingly career-ending gimmicks to become one of the WWE's most popular superstars, Kane. Men on a Mission. Men on a Mission was an idea on paper that likely appealed to Vince McMahon, but it was executed so poorly that the team never had a chance. While it's unlikely Vinnie Mac had any idea what rap or hip-hop was, much like he reportedly had no idea what a burrito was, the WWF's success with the Rock and Wrestling connection a few years earlier may have motivated him to mix rap and wrestling, giving this team a chance. Nelson Frazier Jr. and Robert Horn worked as the heel team, the Harlem Knights, in the USWA and were invited to play Mo and Mabel respectively, aka Men on a Mission. Decades before the New Day preached the power of positivity, Men on a Mission touted positive thinking. They were also years ahead of Fatu and wanting to make a difference. Unfortunately, they were also a team whose work on good days could be best described as not awful. The WWF added an anchor to this albatross of a team with manager Oscar, whose raps likely inspired the West Texas Rednecks' I Hate Rap song. Oscar wasn't the first rapper in wrestling, as WCW had earlier introduced PN News, a 400-plus pound alleged wrestler with a rapper gimmick. While it's never been confirmed, Wrestling's Greatest Moments suspects WCW and later the WWF used Lex Luthor's duplicator Ray to create PN News and Men on a Mission, aiming it at some random rapper to create their own bizarro version. Men on a Mission ultimately proved as talented at wrestling as PN News, who reportedly fumbled his broken record finisher on the Angel of Death, knocking the Angel out of action for nearly a year. Mo and Mabel's matches were the wrestling equivalent of Brian Wilson or David Bowie rapping. The WWF turned the group heel, a potentially good move, but one that flopped when Vince McMahon looked at Mabel as his next big monster heel, and Mabel spent 1995 inadvertently injuring one main eventer after another. The only upside to this was that rapping manager Oscar was booted from the group. The Ding Dongs. Wrestling's Greatest Moments mentioned the Ding Dongs during our look at jobber tag teams, but no list of tag teams that never had a chance would be complete without mentioning Jim Herd's brilliant design, the Ding Dongs. Wrestlers Richard Sartan and Greg Evans went from playing the Rock and Roll Rebels to this crazed concoction from the mind of former Pizza Hut executive turned WCW executive Jim Herd. According to Jim Cornette, Herd believed young fans would take to the concept of two masked men bedecked with bells, throwing a bell at ringside that a ding-dong could use to rally the fans whenever his partner got into trouble, and you had a surefire flop. Fans tuning in to Clash of Champions 7 luckily didn't know what they were watching when the ding-dongs entered the arena, wearing bells on their wrist and ankles. The two were billed from Belleville and tackled enhancement legend George South and his partner Cougar J. The fans quickly ditched the ding-dongs as the ding-dong on the man apron ran a bell without end. The concept crashed on takeoff, but in true WCW form, it kept them on TV and even had them compete at house shows. The ding-dongs' last match saw them squashed by the Skyscrapers, Dan Spivey and Sid Vicious, who then unmasked them, leading to Norman the Lunatic wearing one of their masks. The Dynamic Dudes. Does Jim Herd deserve all the venom that's been directed at him for decades by fans and wrestlers alike? Given his idea that teams like the Ding Dongs were a good idea and that Nature Boy Ric Flair needed to be repackaged as a Spartacus-like wrestler, an idea that thankfully never came to fruition, we'll say yes. Herd's intentions were good. He wanted WCW to cater to a younger audience, but his ideas were akin to what happens when someone out of touch tries to latch on to a cutting-edge idea. However, this is one idea that Herd doesn't deserve blame for: the Dynamic Dudes. The idea of teaming two young, good-looking wrestlers, in this case Shane Douglas and Johnny Ace, and giving them a cool gimmick as skateboarders was reportedly Jim Ross's brainchild. Ross, who had witnessed the Rock and Roll Express's magnificent success, apparently saw a lot in Douglas and Ace. According to the article Wipeout, WCW's Dynamic Dudes, Ross saw the growing popularity in skateboarding and decided that would be their gimmick. This, despite Shane and Johnny having zero experience riding one. The original name for the new tandem was to be called the New Generation. While good old JR concocted the idea, we can still blame Jim Herd for their name, according to the aforementioned article. According to Douglas, Herd conducted a survey through the skateboarding community to see what was the lingo that skateboarders used. The top two words were dynamic and dude. Herd decided that would be a more fitting name for their skater gimmick, so the Dynamic Dudes were born. Douglas and Ace objected to the name, but they were stuck with it. Their entrance featured them carrying skateboards to the ring, which undoubtedly had fans thinking they were frauds. Regrettably, the Dynamic Dudes characters were reminiscent of babyfaces like Bob Backlund, who tried just too hard to win over fans. The act bombed, leading to James E. Cornette writing in for the save, pairing manager Jim Cornette with them as their advisor while he managed the Midnight Express, who were babyfaces at the time along with Cornette. Led nowhere initially. However, when the Midnight Express, Stan Lane and Bobby Eaton, became jealous, WCW booked a match between the Midnights and the Dudes to settle things. Of course, this was all a ruse, and Cornette turned on the Dudes, earning the fans' cheers rather than the boos that WCW had hoped for. The gimmick was so bad that Shane Douglas likely wished he'd gone to medical school, and it's even possible his short run working for Target in the 21st century was caused by coworkers asking him if he still had his skateboard. Thankfully, both Douglas and Johnny Ace's later wrestling careers showed this was just an unfortunate detour in two notable, if not spectacular, in-ring careers. High energy. Owen Hart and Koko B. Ware, two talented wrestlers who were counting the lights with the precision of Swiss timepieces. So why not pair them and have them count the lights together? Was that the WWF's plan? Or did they happen to have two outrageously ugly outfits that they spent too much money on and wanted to use? Turns out the WWF paired these two after Owen's previous tag team partner Jim the Anvil Neidhart bailed on the WWF, dissolving their new foundation team. More about that one in a future video. During an interview with Title Match Wrestling, Koko B. Ware recalled Bobby Heenan coming up with the idea to team Owen with Koko. The team had plenty going for it in terms of talent, so why did they make our list? The problem here was that the WWF seemed to feel both superstars lacked the it factor. Indeed, Koko had worked as a jobber to the Stars, while Owen did likewise during his days as a Blue Blazer. It would take intense lobbying by Bret Hart before Vince McMahon gave Owen a chance and pushed him. Watching Owen and Koko work suggests this team could have done much more than float about in the mid-card. This was a high-flying team with, dare we say it, high energy, and it had the fans behind them, and with a sustained push, might have even held the WWF Tag Team Championship. Their finisher was a modified Doomsday device that saw Owen lift their hapless opponent up, allowing Coco to hit a missile dropkick on him, after Coco fixes ridiculously baggy pants. An impressive move that scraped the surface of how much this team could have offered. Do you agree with our list? What tag teams do you think were doomed from the start? Share your thoughts in the comment section, and let us know if there's any videos you'd like Wrestling's Greatest Moments to cover. In the meantime, subscribe to our channel, follow us on X and Instagram, and spread the good news about Wrestling's Greatest Moments, the channel that celebrates the squared circle.